Hello, my name is Shore and I'm a web developer, but I've always wanted to make games. I found this challenge created by SDG Games named 20 Games Challenge, and I want to complete it, or at least try my best to complete it. The first game is either Flappy Bird or Pong. I've already made both of these in the past using free assets, but just for the sake of the challenge, I don't want to skip this step. So I've decided to start with Flappy Bird. I'm trying to improve my 3D modeling skills, so I'll be making all models for this game myself. I wanted to make a game where you play as a baby dragon. I think they're called Wyrmlings. In this game, a Wyrmling will need to pass through obstacles, represented by castle towers. This is reiterating on an idea I already implemented in 2D. I found some references on Pinterest. I was primarily using the one in the middle for the general shape. So, I've started modeling. First, I've made these guides to track the proportion. I've measured the size of the head on the reference and concluded that the whole body is roughly 3 heads in length and also about 3 heads in height. I've made a block out of the body, trying to keep it low poly. I got the general shape and also extruded the legs. Then I made the neck and created the head. I ended up scraping this variant of the head because I realized it will be hard to create horns from it. Then I added a cube, added a few loop cuts to be able to shape it more like a foot. I attached it to the body. I decided to redo the head. Now adding a subdivision to a cube so I could shape it more easily. I added loop cuts here and there and moved things around to give it more of an elongated look, like that of a lizard. I applied the sub-D modifier and started extruding the horns. At first they looked more like ears, and our Wyrmling started resembling a mouse or a dog. It took me some time to figure out the proper shape, but in the end I quite liked it. I also realized that rotating the horns in relation to the head so they point backwards will give them a proper look. To make them look pointy and sharp, I marked some edges as sharp, which gave horns the look I was coming after. The next step was to make wings. I was pretty much oblivious on how to make them. My first attempt looks silly now, as I've just extruded some faces from the body. But that quickly proven to be a poor choice. I got rid of them and quickly repaired the model to its original shape. Now, I've tried a different approach. I've added a wing reference that I've found in the web. I adjusted its size to the proportion I liked. Then I've traced the shape of the hand by extruding a single vertex. Then I converted resulting object to curve, added bevel, and converted it to mesh again. This turned out to be a poor choice as well. As you can see, I struggled with creating the leathery part of the wing. Also, I've realized that it probably going to bend poorly, and there were major shading issues. So naturally, I've decided to remake the wing again. This time, I found a great tutorial on making a practical wing mesh that also had a detailed section on rigging it. I'll post this tutorial in the description. It actually uses a plane object that I extruded to trace the shape of the wing. Also, I've tried to put edges on top of the fingers in the reference. It'll be important later. I added more edges to have more geometry to better match the wing shape. Then I copied the edges that were on top of the hand part of the reference and added skin modifier to create the actual hand. It turned out so great, and good part is that it'll be pretty easy to rig and animate it. As for the rigging, I've pretty much followed the tutorial, so if you're interested in the rigging part, you could check the Goods tutorial. After rigging the wings and using Rigify add-on to rig the body, I've made my first attempt at animating the character. But I had some issues with importing into Godot, animations were messed up and did not export properly. When working with animations for the character, I initially tried to use the Rigify add-on, but I've made several mistakes. First of all, it seems like you need another add-on for Godot. It's called Rigododify, because it's optimized for the use with Godot. Second of all, I had two separate amateurs for the body and the wings. It caused me a lot of trouble. I had hard time properly exporting the animations, and they were getting messed up when I exported them into Godot. In the end, I realized that the character is not that complex to use the Rigify add-on. I just rigged it myself following guidelines I found in the web. I had to remake all the animations using the new rig, but the end result was so much more comfortable to work with. It kind of shows to me that sometimes it's better to do something yourself because it gives you better understanding of the solution. With Rigify, I wasn't sure what more than a half of the bones are doing. But my own rig ended up being clean and easy to use for me. I knew which bones do what because, well, I added them for that specific purpose. Main takeaway for me here is that mindlessly opting for generic add-on is not the best way. Sometime in between my attempts to make animations work, I also painted the model, as you can see. It took me some time to figure it out. I'm really bad at painting. But I ended up with something that was halfway decent for a small prototype game, in my opinion. Now, I needed to create an obstacle. It was pretty simple, as there are no complex shapes. I've just created a cylinder, extruded a couple of faces at the top to add this fence. Then I made a pretty basic window and added a lattice to bend it around the surface of the tower. Then it was time for UV unwrapping and texturing. I've used the texture I found in the web. I baked it, and then to make the actual window, I've just painted black on the texture by hand. Finally, the coding begins. Code is pretty simple. I added a game controller that handles communication between different parts of the game. It mostly has high-level logic, like calling methods of other classes, apart from probably mouse mode change handling between different states of the game. I don't think this is the best architecture in the long run, as this is basically a textbook example of a god class. In a real project, I'd probably go for some generic approach that doesn't rely on a single class that much, but I didn't want to overcomplicate things for now. For the next video, I'll research better alternatives for handling game states. As for the individual parts of the game, I've added Obstacle Spawner. It handles spawning of obstacles and their lifetime. I added a pool of 5 obstacles that are reused. Essentially, when obstacle reaches the middle of the screen, game gets a free obstacle from the pool and puts it at the spawn point. When obstacle leaves the screen, it stops moving and gets put in the pool of free obstacles. Player. It's just an inherited scene that contains a mesh and some sound players. It handles player animations and state. Score Manager. This class manages scores. It increments score when player passes the obstacle and saves the scores. It uses global game data context, a global variable I've added to manage the game I/O. It handles the storage of scores and settings. Terrain. The class that handles the scrolling background. With the background, I've tried a couple of things. I wanted some sort of a procedural terrain, but then quickly realized that this will be too much for the scope of the game. So I ended up with just a regular cylinder that has a scrolling texture that I implemented using a shader. I also combined multiple textures within a shader to add more variation to the background. After core logic was implemented, I added menus and sounds to the game. For music and sounds, I just used free stuff I found in the web. In future projects, I want to try diving deep into sound effects making, but for now, I think it's fine to use the free assets. So I was pretty much satisfied with the end results. I could tweak the game balance by playing with speed and collision shapes, but overall, core mechanics are implemented and game is playable. Let me know what you think about it. Put a like and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more content like that. I'm planning to start working on a next video relatively soon. I already have an idea for the next game and I started working on the concept. But feel free to suggest your ideas in the comments. Next game should be something similar in scope. I'm looking at Jetpack Joyride, but I want to dive into the modeling and animations more. So it also will be a 3D game. See you in the next video.